Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're the show that cuts through all the noise to deliver the insights you really need to be truly well-informed. And today, we're plunging into something absolutely critical. It's really about survival for any organization. How do businesses stay operational? How do they keep delivering services and, bounce back when things go wrong, whether it's unexpected or, frankly, sometimes even expected?
That's exactly right. Our mission here for this deep dive is to really unpack those critical, often invisible layers of protection. We're talking about availability, resiliency, and disaster recovery. You've shared a really fascinating stack of sources with us, and our goal is simple. Distill them down to the most important nuggets. We want to make sure you walk away with a crystal clear understanding of the hidden infrastructure that truly keeps our digital world humming.
Yeah, get ready for some surprising facts, I think. Definitely some practical insights. And maybe a few of those unexpected aha moments about why your favorite apps seem to just always work, or why it's so frustrating when they don't. Okay, so let's kick things off with the foundation, the concept that really underpins all of this, availability.
Yeah.
We tend to take it completely for granted, don't we? You click an app, refresh a web page, log into your work system. You just expect it to be there, working perfectly, on demand.
Yeah.
But what does availability truly mean in a business context? Is it more than just a system being, on?
Oh, absolutely. It's far more comprehensive than just a server humming along in a closet somewhere. Broadly speaking, availability is about being able to perform essential business functions and meet those organizational objectives. And that's not just when, say, business data is accessible and IT systems are operating normally.
Hmm.
Critically, it also includes when an organization's human capital, its people, its personnel, are ready and able to perform their duties. Think about it this way. Your systems might be technically up, running fine. But if your staff can't physically get to work because there's a huge blizzard, or maybe they're just too overwhelmed or stressed after some event to function effectively, well then, true availability in that holistic sense isn't fully achieved. It's really a state of total operational readiness.
I see what you mean. That's a really crucial distinction. It's not just the machines. So let's dig deeper into why this isn't just a nice to have. Why is it an absolute must? Why is availability so incredibly critical? Why can't businesses just, take five when things go down for a bit?
Well, because even relatively minor periods of paused operations or system downtime can cause organizations major problems, sometimes even irreparable ones. We're talking direct financial hits, right? Immediate loss of revenue from missed sales or failing to deliver a service people pay for. There's also the potential for actual loss of data if systems aren't properly protected, and that can be catastrophic. But, perhaps the most damaging thing in the long run is the significant erosion of customer trust.
Right.
When you lose that trust, you very quickly lose customers themselves. And rebuilding that reputation, it can take years if you ever fully do.
Yeah, think about your own experience listening to this. If your banking app is down right when you need to make an urgent transfer, or maybe an e-commerce site crashes repeatedly during a big sale, how quickly do you start looking for an alternative? It's almost immediate for me.
Exactly. The surprising truth about availability isn't just about avoiding that immediate financial loss. It's about how even these tiny moments, these micro moments of unavailability, can shatter a meticulously built brand reputation faster than almost any other kind of business misstep, especially today. And this illustrates precisely why mitigating the risk of normal operations failing, whether it's in part or the whole thing, is just paramount. And this mitigation, this overall strategy, is achieved through what we call business resiliency. This isn't just a tech fix. It's the overarching strategic ability for an organization to rebound from any kind of disruption. It's like the big umbrella concept. Everything else we'll talk about fits under it.
That makes perfect sense. Okay, so it's clear these concepts are deeply integrated then. Like you said, pieces of a puzzle forming this complete picture of resilience. It's not just about one single thing. It's about having a comprehensive strategic framework where everything works together seamlessly.
Precisely. When you look at this landscape of business survival, you see several key considerations that all link up, forming a really robust defense. At the foundational layer, you've got system availability controls. These are the sort of day-to-day preventative measures. They're specifically designed to stop system disruptions from happening in the first place, aiming for constant uptime. Then, building on that, there's the broader concept of business resiliency. That's the strategic ability to rebound we mentioned, making sure you have continuous operation or at least a quick return after any interruption, big or small. Within that strategic umbrella, you then have business continuity. Now, this focuses on the organization's ability to keep delivering its core products and services. It's about the overall business operations, and it extends far beyond just the tech side. It includes people, processes, facilities, the whole shebang.
Right, keeping the actual business running.
Exactly. And then, specifically for the IT side, particularly after a major disruptive event like a fire or a flood, you have disaster recovery, DR. This is all about the strategic recovery of those IT functions when systems are severely compromised or, maybe even destroyed. It's the plan for getting the tech backbone back online.
Okay, the IT specific part.
Correct. And then beyond these, you have crisis management. This is the overall response to a really dire, large-scale situation. Think major public relations nightmare, a huge security breach affecting millions, or a regional natural disaster. It's broader than just IT recovery. It covers communication, reputation management, dealing with stakeholders, everything. And finally, often forming a part of either DR or crisis management, you have the incident response plan. This is a very specific, detailed plan for how you react and recover from a particular type of event, like a specific kind of cyber attack or a major system outage, step by step.
Got it.
And all of this, the whole structure, is underpinned by crucial practical controls. Things like physical and IT infrastructure controls, basically. Locking the doors to the data center and securing the network. You need uninterrupted power supply, UPS, for backup power during outages, those big battery packs, and robust redundancy and backup measures, making sure data is copied and safe, and that IT operations can quickly resume from replicated environments if something fails.
What genuinely strikes me about this, looking at it holistically, is how it forces organizations to look beyond just the technology itself. It's so clear it's not just about having great tech that works most of the time, it's about a comprehensive strategy. It covers every single aspect, the people, the processes, and the technology that supports them all. It's truly woven into the very fabric of how a business operates, isn't it?
It has to be truly effective. So let's dive a bit deeper into business resiliency itself. It really is the master plan for organizational survival. At its core, business resiliency is the integration of all these components we just laid out: the system availability controls, DR plans, business continuity plans, crisis management plans. They all come together into one central set of procedures. And the fundamental question it tries to answer is, can the business keep operating or quickly get back to operating without irreparable harm? Harm to its people, its information, or its assets. It's all about minimizing the impact of any disruption and ensuring the business can endure, can survive.
That sounds incredibly complex to actually weave together in practice.
Yeah.
From what you've seen, what are the practical steps businesses actually take? How do they even start building this master plan? How do they weave all those threads together?
It definitely starts with a very deliberate process. The first crucial step is for organizations to meticulously identify their core operational activities. What are the absolute essentials? What must the business do day to day to function? And this isn't just, what makes money. It's everything that keeps the lights on, serves customers, meets legal obligations.
Right, real non-negotiables.
Exactly. Once those critical functions are identified, they have to rigorously assess the existing and potential threats to those activities. This can range from, natural disasters like hurricanes or earthquakes to cyber threats, supply chain issues, even simple human error. You have to think broadly.
Okay.
Only once these critical systems and processes are clearly understood, documented, can management then start to build the actual resiliency program. And this program is designed specifically to ensure that these vital functions can be quickly repaired, brought back online, minimizing downtime and impact, no matter what the crisis or disruption is. It's very much a proactive, strategic effort, needs planning, needs investment.
All right, now let's shift focus slightly. Let's talk about a crucial element within that broader business resiliency program: disaster recovery, or DR.
Yeah.
This is really where the IT lifeline comes in, and it's something I think a lot of people might confuse with business continuity. They sound similar.
They do sound similar, and it's a common point of confusion. But disaster recovery is an entity's specific plan for restoring and continuing its information technology function, its IT systems. That's in the event of widespread destruction. And we're not just talking about recovering, say, program files and data files. We mean the entire computer processing capability, the infrastructure itself.
Okay, so it's really focused on the tech infrastructure getting wiped out or severely damaged.
Precisely. And it's important to clarify. Short-term problems, minor outages, like a server rebooting or being down for an hour, those typically aren't considered disasters in the DR context. DR becomes necessary when processing simply cannot be quickly reestablished at the original site. Maybe because that site literally doesn't exist anymore. Think fire or flood, or it's been compromised beyond immediate repair. It's the plan for when your primary digital home is, well, no longer habitable.
What's particularly compelling here, from the sources, is that there are clear, actionable steps involved in a DR plan. It's not just this vague idea that, IT will somehow figure it out when catastrophe strikes. It's highly structured.
That's absolutely right. A robust disaster recovery plan typically follows 5 key methodical steps. First, you assess the risks. You need to really understand every conceivable thing that could go wrong with your IT setup: hardware failure, software bugs, cyber attacks, power outages, natural disasters, and critically, the likelihood of each.
Okay, know your enemy.
Second, you identify mission-critical applications and data. This requires a thorough analysis, usually through that business impact analysis we'll talk about later, to pinpoint what absolutely must keep running or be recovered immediately for the business to survive. What can you absolutely not live without? Third, you develop a plan for handling those mission-critical applications. This details precisely how it will be restored, maybe replicated, maybe moved to an alternative environment. What's the specific recovery procedure for each critical piece? Fourth, you determine the responsibilities of the personnel involved. Who does what during a disaster? Everyone needs to know their precise role, their tasks, who they report to. Clear chains of command are vital in a crisis. And finally, and this is arguably the most crucial step, you test the disaster recovery plan. A plan on paper is just that, paper. Until it's proven to work under simulated, realistic conditions, you don't actually know if it's effective. Regular testing is non-negotiable. It finds the flaws before real disaster does. Now let's say a true disaster happens. Your original IT processing site is compromised, maybe completely gone. An organization generally has 3 main options for maintaining IT operations using alternative facilities. To help visualize this, maybe think of them like setting up a temporary office after your main building becomes unusable, but they come with different levels of readiness and different price tags.
Okay, I like that analogy. What are the options?
The first option is a cold site.
Yeah.
Imagine you've just rented an empty warehouse or office space.
Yeah.
It has the necessary electrical connections, maybe plumbing, the physical space, but absolutely no actual equipment, no servers, no computers, no networking gear, nothing. It's the least costly option up front, just securing the space.
Okay, bare bones.
Very bare bones. And because of that, it takes the longest to get operational, typically 1 to 3 days, maybe even longer, depending on how quickly you can get equipment delivered and installed. Organizations using cold sites usually rely on having pre-negotiated contracts with vendors for generic hardware ready for rapid deployment. It's the start from almost nothing approach. Takes time.
Got it. What's next?
Then you have a warm site. This is sort of the middle ground. Using our analogy, it's like that warehouse now has some basic furniture, power is definitely on, maybe some network cabling is pre-installed, and crucially, there might be some servers and hardware already installed, but it might not be the exact same equipment you had, maybe not as powerful, maybe not fully up to date with your software or data.
So partially equipped.
Right. It's a calculated compromise between the cold site's low cost and the hot site's readiness. A warm site can usually be operational much faster than a cold site, perhaps within hours or up to 3 days. You might need to bring in some specific, specialized gear or spend time updating the software and restoring the most recent data, but the basic infrastructure is there and ready to be configured. It's the semi-furnished option.
Okay, that makes sense. And the last one, the fastest.
That's the hot site. This is your fully equipped, ready-to-go mirror image office and data center waiting on standby. It's an off-site location, fully equipped with all the necessary hardware identical or equivalent to your primary site, all the office equipment, and it's pre-wired for immediate use. Critically, backup copies of essential data are often continuously replicated and maintained there, sometimes in real time or very close to it.
Wow, so it's literally ready to flip a switch.
Exactly. This site can be operational immediately, literally allowing you to switch over processing, maybe with just a few minutes of interruption, and pick up right where you left off with minimal, if any, data loss. It's the turnkey solution for instant recovery. But, as you can imagine, it's also the most expensive option to maintain.
That's a fantastic way to differentiate them. So just to summarize quickly, maybe using that matrix idea from the sources.
Yeah.
A cold site, it's off-site, basically no connections or equipment ready, takes 1-3 days plus to get running, and it's the cheapest.
Correct.
A warm site, also off-site, some connections and equipment might be there, takes maybe 3 days to get fully operational, and it's moderately expensive. And the hot site, off-site, again, fully connected, fully equipped, operational basically immediately, and it's the most expensive.
You've got it.
It really highlights that critical trade-off, doesn't it? Between the upfront cost and ongoing maintenance versus the speed of recovery you need. The faster you need to be back up after a catastrophe, the more you're going to invest in that readiness. Seems like a direct calculation of risk tolerance versus budget.
That's a perfect summary, and you've nailed the core trade-off. Now, while disaster recovery is laser-focused on restoring that IT infrastructure, let's make sure we clearly differentiate it from business continuity plans, BCPs, because BCPs are focused on keeping the entire business operational. They're far more comprehensive. They cover all business processes, even those that don't directly involve IT.
Ah, okay. So BCP is broader than just the tech.
Much broader. It includes things like maybe relocating entire departments to a temporary facility. It covers human resource tasks. How do you communicate with employees during a crisis? How do you ensure payroll still runs? It also involves managing crucial relationships with customers, suppliers, even regulators during the disruption. A BCP answers the big question. How does the entire enterprise continue to function when normal operations are impossible?
So what does this all really mean for the business as a whole then? The overall goal of a BCP is what? To continue or restore operations as efficiently and effectively as possible. But considering all aspects of the organization, not just servers coming back online, but people having a place to work, phones being answered, supply chains moving, deliveries going out, that kind of thing.
Exactly. It's the holistic view of keeping the business alive and functioning. To achieve this, business continuity plans have to consider a few key things. First, you meticulously identify the organization's key business processes. Again, what are the absolute non-negotiables for the business to continue its core mission? Second, you identify the risks that exist in those key business processes. And this goes beyond just IT risks. Think about staff availability, dependencies on single suppliers, facility access issues, the whole range. Third, and this is critical, you determine the acceptable downtime for those key business processes. How long can each process realistically be offline before causing unacceptable damage? This directly leads to defining what we call recovery time objectives, RTOs, the target time to restore function and recovery point objectives, RPOs, how much data loss is tolerable, measured in time. These are crucial metrics that usually come from a business impact analysis, which we'll get to shortly. And finally, based on all that, you implement specific mitigation and contingency plans. These address those identified risks and potential downtimes, aiming to either prevent them entirely or drastically reduce their impact if they do occur.
We actually have a great real-world example of this from our sources that really brings it home. Health One Inc., a health insurance company. They serve members all over the country, but they're located in a region where hurricanes are a serious threat every single year. And a major challenge for them is that many of their employees work remotely, and during these natural disasters, those remote employees often lose internet access. They just can't work from home. That's a huge problem, right? Especially for a health insurance company, where service continuity can literally impact patient care and approvals.
It's a huge challenge and a critical one for them to solve. Health One's business continuity plan, thankfully, effectively addresses this exact scenario. A key component of their BCP is a predefined strategy to relocate a core team, their essential employees, to a secure operational facility when a hurricane threatens. This facility is guaranteed to have internet access and telephone services, ensuring those critical communication lines stay open no matter what's happening outside.
Smart.
And furthermore, several years ago, they made a really strategic, forward-thinking move. They transferred all their critical applications and systems to the cloud. This cloud-based infrastructure means that the relocated core team can seamlessly access everything they need and resume necessary business operations from that secure off-site location. It doesn't matter if the remote workforce has lost local internet.
The cloud makes a big difference there.
A massive difference. It's a powerful example of how cloud computing can fundamentally revolutionize business continuity. It enables a level of resilience that would be incredibly difficult, maybe even impossible, to achieve with traditional on-premise servers. Imagine, like you said, a patient needing an urgent prescription authorization during a storm, and Health One's systems are down because their local data center is offline. The ripple effect goes far beyond just lost revenue. It can directly impact health outcomes. Their BCP, using the cloud, mitigates this beautifully. It's also really worth noting how seriously independent auditors take this stuff, particularly those conducting a SOC2 engagement. SOC2 is an audit framework focusing on controls at service organizations related to security, availability, processing integrity, confidentiality, and privacy. During SOC2 audit, the service auditors actively verify that an organization's BCP testing is performed periodically and performed thoroughly.
So what exactly are these auditors looking for? They're not just checking a box that says BCP exists, are they? They're really digging in.
Oh, absolutely not. Just checking a box. They're looking for proof that the BCP isn't just a theoretical document collecting dust on a shelf. They determine if the BCP was based on relevant and likely scenarios, not just, zombie apocalypses, but things that could actually happen to that business in that location. They check if it focused on the components and processes that can significantly impair the company's operations if they fail, ensuring critical areas aren't overlooked.
Okay.
Crucially, they verify if the plan considered scenarios where key personnel might be unavailable because of the disaster itself. Do they have backups for their key people? And perhaps most importantly, they look for evidence that the plan was periodically revised and improved based on the results of past tests. What did they learn from the last drill, and did they actually fix the problems they found? This really emphasizes that testing isn't just a formality. It's absolutely crucial for validating the plan's effectiveness in a real-world situation and for driving continuous improvement. A plan that isn't tested is, frankly, often a plan that won't work when you need it most. Now, moving beyond just IT and core operations, let's touch on crisis management plans, or CMPs. In business operations, a crisis is generally defined as an unexpected, large-scale incident, something that can cause major negative effects on an organization and its stakeholders. Think beyond just a system outage or even a regional flood. Think a major product contamination that causes public health scares, or a widespread data breach exposing millions of customers' private information, or a severe reputational attack that threatens public trust. Big stuff.
Yeah, things that really shake the foundations.
Exactly. And crisis management policies are absolutely vital because a crisis creates these incredibly stressful situations. You have to make important decisions very quickly, often with incomplete information. Without clearly defined roles, responsibilities, and procedures laid out in a CMP, these decisions can become chaotic, fragmented, and ultimately ineffective. That just amplifies the negative consequences.
That paints a really vivid picture of the stakes involved. So what are the core goals of a well-designed crisis management plan when you're facing something that dire?
Well, the primary goals of a robust CMP are multifaceted. First, obviously, lessen the immediate impact of the crisis itself, contain the damage. Second, protect people, both your employees and other stakeholders. Ensure their safety and well-being above all else. Third, protect the organizational reputation. Reputational damage during a crisis can be severe and have very long-lasting impacts on future viability. And of course, the goal is always to return to normal operations as soon as humanly possible, or at least establish a functional new normal.
And how do the policies achieve that? What should they cover?
To achieve these goals, crisis management policies need to address several key areas. They need a thorough risk assessment of potential crises specific to that organization and documented procedures for how to respond to each type. They need to outline clear procedures for implementation that everyone, management and employees, must follow. A clear playbook. They often establish a crisis response command center. This could be a physical room or even a virtual one where all directives originate and information is centralized. Reduces confusion. They must define clear crisis management roles and responsibilities for every individual involved. Who's in charge? Who makes which decisions? Who communicates? They need to set up robust internal and external communication lines to manage messaging effectively. Talking to employees, customers, the media, regulators, it all needs coordination.
Communication is key in a crisis.
Absolutely critical. And finally, they need to ensure proper employee training on all these policies and procedures because, again, a plan is only as good as the people who have to execute it under pressure.
Okay, this raises a really important question, and it's one I definitely hear a lot. How do all these distinct plans, you've got DR, BC, and now CM, how do they all fit together into that bigger picture of business resiliency? It can feel like a lot of overlapping pieces, and it's easy to get them confused.
That's a really critical distinction to grasp, and it's where our little passkey summary comes in handy to clarify things. Think of it this way. Business resiliency is the big one, the overall strategic umbrella. It's the integrated framework of all procedures designed to keep operations running smoothly by anticipating and preparing for any disruption. It's the grand strategy for organizational survival.
Okay, the overarching strategy.
Then disaster recovery, DR, focuses specifically on the IT functions. Its mission is purely to get the technology backbone, the servers, networks, applications, data back online after a major IT-specific disaster. It's about restoring the digital infrastructure.
Got it. Tech recovery.
Business continuity, BC, focuses on the non-IT, operational, and personnel functions. It's about ensuring the business as a whole can continue delivering its products and services, even if the primary facility is unavailable or key staff are dispersed. It's about the continued functioning of human processes and critical business workflows.
Keeping the business processes going.
And crisis management,
Mhm.
CM, focuses on those large-scale, unexpected incidents considered a full-blown crisis. This deals with the broader organizational and reputational impact, managing communications, making high-level strategic decisions during a period of severe disruption. It's about navigating the storm itself.
Okay, managing the major event and its fallout.
Exactly. So while they are distinct in their focus, DR for IT, BC for operations, CM for crisis events, they are all interconnected components of a comprehensive business resiliency program. Their effectiveness really hinges on their seamless integration. A brilliant DR plan is pretty useless if the business continuity plan doesn't account for how people will actually use the restored tech, right?
Yeah.
Or if crisis management can't effectively communicate the recovery status to anxious stakeholders. It truly has to be a collaborative, integrated effort for organizational survival.
That clarity is incredibly helpful, thanks. Now that we understand the different plans, how do organizations even begin to figure out what they need to protect most urgently and, to what extent? This brings us to a really key component for identifying and assessing risks when building any business resiliency program. The business impact analysis, or BIA. What exactly is that?
A BIA is a really systematic and rigorous analysis. Its job is to identify the business units, the departments, and the specific processes that are absolutely essential to an entity's survival. And crucially, it doesn't just identify them. It also identifies the organizational impact, both financial impact and reputational impact, if those essential functions fail or are disrupted.
Okay, so it figures out what's critical and what happens if it breaks.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And beyond just identifying them, a BIA determined how quickly those essential units or processes must return to full operation after a disaster. This is where those recovery time objectives, RTOs, how fast you need it back, and recovery point objectives, RPOs, how much data you can afford to lose, are formally defined. It also meticulously pinpoints the specific resources required to resume operations. Do you need custom hardware? A specific physical location? Are you heavily reliant on certain third-party vendors? It maps out all those dependencies. It's essentially a deep dive into the true dependencies and vulnerabilities of the entire business operation.
And I imagine this analysis is absolutely vital because it directly helps businesses prioritize, right?
Yeah.
Where do you invest your limited time, your money, your resources for recovery? You simply can't protect everything equally, so you desperately need to know what truly matters most to keep the organization viable.
You've hit on the core value proposition exactly. The BIA helps categorize potential impacts to understand their severity, giving you a clear framework for making those tough decisions. For instance, it might define a high-impact H category. This signifies that a department or process literally cannot operate without a specific resource. If it goes down, the impact is immediate and severe. This might mean the organization faces very high recovery costs, or it might completely fail to meet critical objectives, or its reputation could be significantly damaged. This is your mission-critical stuff.
Top priority.
Absolutely. Then you might have a moderate or medium impact M category. This suggests the department could maybe partially function, limp along temporarily for a limited period, perhaps days or a week during a disruption. While there might be some recovery costs and some effect on meeting objectives or maintaining reputation, the immediate threat to survival isn't quite as dire as a high-impact event.
Okay, serious but not fatal immediately.
Right. And finally, a low-impact L category indicates the department could probably operate for an extended period, maybe weeks or even months, with only minor adjustments if that resource is unavailable. It might just notice a negligible or maybe a delayed effect on achieving its objectives or maintaining its reputation. These clear categories provide a standardized way to assess and communicate risk across the whole organization.
These categories seem incredibly useful, don't they? They help make those informed, strategic decisions about which systems, which processes, which resources need the most robust protection, the fastest recovery times, and consequently, where the biggest investments should go. It's fascinating how this translates abstract risk into concrete prioritization.
They absolutely do. And conducting a BIA isn't just some nebulous theoretical exercise either. It follows a pretty methodical 7-step process. It's almost like applying the scientific method to business resilience.
Okay, walk us through it. What are the steps?
Step 1, establish the BIA approach. This is where senior leadership and management get together and agree on the overall methodology. They define the types of impacts they'll consider: financial, reputational, operational, legal, the criteria for assessing severity, using those HML categories, for example, the time frames they'll use for recovery analysis, and the overall process. It's about setting the groundwork and getting buy-in.
Get everyone on the same page first. Makes sense.
Step 2. Identify critical resources. Management has to meticulously define the critical functions within the organization. Again, what are the absolute non-negotiables? Then they delineate precisely which IT resources, which human resources, which facilities, even which third-party services are required to perform those critical functions. This usually involves a lot of interviews with key people across different departments, plus reviewing process documentation, system diagrams, trying to uncover those hidden dependencies and potential single points of failure.
Digging deep into how things actually work.
Exactly. Step 3. Define disruption impacts. In this crucial phase, the organization identifies and evaluates the specific impact of a service disruption over time. It's not just a snapshot, it's dynamic. How do the negative effects accumulate the longer a critical service is down? 1 hour might be okay, 24 hours might be catastrophic. They consider which resources would be negatively affected and what would be needed just to deal with the disruption itself. And these risks, remember, can be quantitative direct financial losses, regulatory fines, or qualitative like damage to reputation or loss of market share. And they can come from anywhere: natural disasters, cyber attacks, insider threats, simple accidents.
Okay, quantifying the pain over time.
Step 4. Estimate losses. This step involves outlining an exhaustive list of potential risks and specific events that could disrupt operations. Then, critically, assigning a probability or likelihood to each one. This probability is often expressed as the annualized rate of occurrence, ARO. How often, on average, do we expect this event to happen per year? This is where we really start to quantify potential losses, moving from abstract risk, a flood might happen, to a more concrete financial projection. A flood of this magnitude has a 5% chance of happening this year. This quantification is what ultimately leads into calculating the annualized loss expectancy, or ALE.
Trying to put numbers on it.
Step 5. Establish recovery priorities. Based on those defined disruption impacts and the RTOS RPOs established for each critical function, management has to prioritize the recovery strategies. Resources or processes that have a lower maximum tolerable outage time, meaning they can only be down for a very short period before causing significant, maybe catastrophic business impact, obviously get addressed first. For example, a core financial transaction system that the BIA determines can only tolerate, say, 4 hours of downtime will absolutely be prioritized for immediate, maybe hot site level recovery over an internal HR reporting system that could perhaps handle 24 hours of disruption without major long-term consequences.
Makes sense. Triage based on impact and time.
Step 6. Create the BIA report. All this information, the critical functions, dependencies, impacts, RTOs, RPOs, potential losses, gets compiled into reports. These might be done at the department level or maybe by business unit or even product lines, as long as all the known risks and dependencies are thoroughly addressed. These individual reports can then be combined and aggregated to form a comprehensive, company-wide BIA. This gives senior management that holistic view of the organization's critical assets and its biggest vulnerabilities.
Okay, package it all up.
And finally, step 7. Implement BIA recommendations. This is where the rubber meets the road. Senior management evaluates that comprehensive BIA report. They look at the identified critical functions, the potential impacts, the estimated losses, including that ALE figure. They then determine which risks pose the greatest threat to the organization's survival and strategic objectives. And based on that, they allocate resources, budget, personnel, time to implement preventative controls or corrective actions, maybe investing in better backups or securing a warm site or improving cybersecurity. And it's not a one-time thing. The BIA should be reviewed and updated regularly, maybe annually, or when significant changes occur, making it a continuous cycle of assessment, mitigation, and improvement.
Okay, this is where it gets genuinely interesting for me, because the BIA isn't just about identifying problems or setting priorities in theory. It actually translates into a concrete financial understanding through something called the annualized loss expectancy, or ALE. This lets businesses put a real dollar figure on their risks. Let's use that BuildTech Inc. scenario from our sources again. They're a manufacturing company worried about flooding. Their data center is valued at $5 million. They estimate that a particular type of flood, which could impact 40% of that data center, is expected to occur roughly every 20 years. How does calculating the ALE help them make concrete decisions?
This is a perfect, practical example of how you quantify risk in a way that truly informs strategic investment. It takes the guesswork out. Let's break down the formula step by step, make it super clear. First, as we touched on, we calculate the annualized rate of occurrence, ARO. This is just the expected frequency of that specific event happening in any given year. For Build Tech, their historical data, or maybe regional meteorological data, suggests this significant flood happens about once every 20 years. So the calculation is simple. One occurrence 20 years equals 0.05. This means there's a 5% chance of this specific flood event happening in any single year. It helps normalize infrequent but high-impact events into an annual probability.
Okay, 5% chance per year. Got it.
Next, we determine the exposure factor, EF. This represents the percentage of the asset's value that's expected to be lost or damaged if the specific threat actually materializes. BuildTech assessed that if this particular flood occurs, 40% of their $5 million data center would be impacted, damaged, or destroyed. So their exposure factor for this risk is 40%, or we express it as 0.40 in calculations.
Right, the percentage of damage.
Then we calculate the single loss expectancy, SLE. This is the estimated financial cost of an individual single occurrence of that loss event. How much money do we expect to lose each time this flood happens? The SLE is calculated by multiplying that exposure factor, EF, by the total value of the asset, AV. So for BuildTech, SLE equals EF 0.40, asset value $5 million. That gives them an SLE of $2 million. So if this specific flood occurs just once, they expect the financial impact to be around $2 million.
Wow, okay, that's a big number for one event.
It certainly can be.
Yeah.
And finally, we arrive at the annualized loss expectancy, ALE. This is the crucial number. It's the projected average financial cost of this specific loss over a year, taking into account both how much damage it does, SLE, and how often it's likely to happen, ARO. The ALE is calculated by multiplying the single loss expectancy, SLE, by the annualized rate of occurrence.
Oh.
So for ALE, OELE, $2 million, ARO, 0.05. This results in an ALE of $100,000.
$100,000 ALE. So what does that number, $100,000, actually mean for Build Tech or any business in practical terms? It's not just an academic exercise, is it? It provides a tangible, actionable financial metric, right?
Absolutely. It tells BuildTech Inc. that based on their analysis, they should budget or expect, on average, to lose $100,000 per year, specifically due to this potential flooding risk to their data center. Now, that $100,000 figure becomes incredibly powerful for decision-making. They can now make an informed, data-driven decision about how much it's worth investing in flood prevention measures, maybe building flood walls, raising equipment, improving drainage.
Right. Does the fix cost less than the expected annual loss?
Exactly. Or how much should they budget for disaster recovery specifically for that risk? Maybe that $100 ALE justifies the cost of a warm site or enhanced backup solutions. It quantifies the potential financial impact of that specific disruption and allows for strategic, rational allocation of resources. It turns we should probably do something about flooding into preventing this flood risk is worth investing up to $6 per year. It's the difference between guessing about risk and truly understanding its potential cost. And that financial quantification is so critical because, let's face it, in today's interconnected world, technology is absolutely central to how almost every modern business operates. As such, system availability, just keeping the tech running, often represents the largest and most immediate risk an organization faces daily. There are numerous types of risks and threats that can lead to data loss or disruptions in business operations, and really understanding them is the first step towards mitigating them effectively.
So let's unpack these major risks and threats then. What are the things that truly keep businesses up at night when it comes to system availability? What are the common culprits?
Well, one primary category is simply the failure of IT infrastructure. This is a pretty broad umbrella, right? It covers straightforward hardware failures, servers dying, disks crashing, network switches failing. It also includes software bugs that can cause systems to crash or behave unpredictably, and failures in critical network applications.
Okay, stuff just breaking.
Right. And the causes can vary. Maybe you're using outdated infrastructure that's just old and prone to breaking down. Maybe there's a lack of consistent, proactive system maintenance, not patching things, not monitoring things properly. Pervasive malware infections can cripple systems too. And beyond just technical faults, there's often physical damage.
Ah, the physical world intruding.
Exactly. This could be from devastating natural disasters, fires, floods, hurricanes, earthquakes that directly impact data centers or communication lines. Or maybe more unsettlingly, from political threats like terrorist attacks or acts of war, depending on where you operate. And of course, the ever-present risk of accidental damage, someone spills coffee on a server or cuts the wrong cable, or malicious damage from individuals, whether they're disgruntled insiders or external attackers.
Right.
And finally, under this umbrella, you have direct cyber attacks like denial of service, DDoS, or distributed denial of service, DDoS attacks. These are explicitly designed to purposefully overload systems with traffic, making them unavailable to legitimate users. All these can directly knock systems offline.
Okay, a lot of ways for infrastructure to fail. What else?
Another significant risk, which is slightly different, is insufficient capacity and resources. This isn't about something breaking, it's about the system being overwhelmed. If an organization's IT infrastructure simply cannot meet the current processing or storage demands, maybe due to unexpected business growth or seasonal spikes in traffic, or maybe just poor planning and underestimation of requirements, well, systems can slow down dramatically, they become unresponsive, or they might even crash entirely under the load. It's like trying to run a marathon on a diet of potato chips, like you said before. The system is starved of the resources it needs.
Yeah, running out of steam.
And this also extends to human capital. If you don't have enough adequately trained staff to properly operate and maintain the increasingly complex IT environment, systems can become neglected. Vulnerabilities might go unpatched, performance issues might go unaddressed, leading to degradation or failure.
So not enough power or not enough people.
Exactly. And finally, a fundamental overarching risk is simply a lack of business resiliency itself. If that comprehensive business resiliency program, encompassing all the elements we've discussed, DR, BC, controls, is insufficient, or maybe it's completely non-existent, then organizations face potentially profound consequences when something does go wrong. They risk losing critical data, confidential data, private customer data, maybe irrevocably. They might recover from a disruption, but agonizingly slowly, leading to prolonged operational halts, massive financial losses, and huge reputational damage. And in the worst case scenario, if there's no robust resiliency framework in place at all, an organization might simply never recover from a major disruption. It could lead to total business failure.
That's sobering. So those are the big risks. What about mitigation? What specific IT processes do organizations use to fight back against these risks and try to ensure access to data and systems?
Fortunately, there are several specific IT processes that are widely implemented precisely to mitigate these risks and help ensure that continuous access, even when things go wrong. These are critical tools in the Resilience Toolkit. First, there's mirroring. This is a common data storage and backup process. It involves creating and maintaining an exact identical copy of a database onto a different machine, often located within the same data center. Its primary purpose is to provide immediate data redundancy and high availability. If the primary database server fails, you have an identical synchronized copy ready to take over, often with an automatic failover mechanism. Ensures near instantaneous recovery for that specific database.
Okay, an identical twin right next door.
Pretty much. Then we have replication. This takes the concept of mirroring a step further, usually in terms of geographical dispersion and therefore resilience against site-level disasters. Replication involves copying and transferring data between different databases, but these are located in different sites. This could be a geographically distinct data center, hundreds or thousands of miles away, or maybe leveraging cloud infrastructure across different availability zones or regions.
Spreading the copies out geographically.
Exactly. This allows operations to resume relatively quickly at the secondary site after a system failure or even a total site loss at the primary location. It provides a powerful layer of redundancy against things like fires, floods, or major power outages affecting a whole region. It's key for business continuity if an entire physical site is lost.
Makes sense. Protects against bigger disasters.
Well,
What about internet issues?
right. To address internet outages, especially those tricky ones where the power doesn't fail but your main internet connection does, organizations utilize secondary internet sources. This can be as simple, and often is, as having two distinct internet connections from different providers coming into critical locations. If ISP-A goes down, the network automatically routes traffic through ISP-B.
Like having two roads into the office.
Good analogy. Alternatively, many businesses and individuals now use cellular connections as an immediate backup. Think about using your smartphone hotspot in a pinch, or maybe dedicated standalone wireless hotspots. Even more robustly, you can get wireless hotspot adapters that physically connect to your existing networking infrastructure, your routers and switches. These can source internet directly from a cell tower, effectively powering your existing network via the cellular network if the primary wired connection fails.
Yeah, I've definitely relied on my phone's hotspot when my home Wi-Fi goes out.
Yeah.
You know firsthand how crucial that backup connection can be when the main one fails, especially if you're trying to work.
Exactly. It's the same principle,
Yeah.
just often implemented on a larger, more automated scale in businesses. Now, these strategies like replication and secondary internet, while crucial, are themselves supported by even more foundational system availability controls. These controls are really the proactive measures and the established procedures that encompass activities designed to prevent disruptions and information loss from happening in the first place. Alongside those preventative measures, they also include specific mechanisms for continuing operations or enabling quick recovery if an incident does occur. And as we've discussed, those crisis management plans, disaster recovery plans, business continuity plans, they are all integral components of these overarching system availability controls. But they rely heavily on a robust underlying infrastructure of these preventative measures being in place and working effectively day to day.
Okay, so what are some of these fundamental preventative controls that are always working in the background?
Well, they fall into a few key categories. First, you have physical controls. This is all about deterring and protecting against physical damage to the IT hardware components and the facilities where they're housed. This includes things like robust physical access controls, maybe key cards, biometric scanners, security guards monitoring who goes in and out, comprehensive surveillance cameras,
Hmm.
basically keeping unauthorized people away from the gear.
Locks on the doors, essentially.
Essentially, yes, but often much more sophisticated. It also covers environmental controls, things like sensitive fire detection alarms and appropriate fire suppression systems, maybe gas-based systems in data centers rather than water sprinklers, and advanced facility design considerations, maybe raised floors to protect equipment from potential water damage or flooding, and powerful, often redundant air conditioning systems to prevent servers from overheating, which is a common cause of failure.
Keeping things cool and dry and secure.
Exactly. Then, moving from the physical to the logical, you have IT infrastructure controls. These are the logical controls built into the hardware, software, and network components themselves. Their job is to actively mitigate malicious attacks, system compromises, and operational failures from within the systems. This means things like continuously using and critically updating anti-malware software across all servers and endpoints, implementing rigorous patch management programs to identify and fix software vulnerabilities as soon as patches are available.
Plug in the holes.
Right. Performing periodic reviews of the IT infrastructure components, servers, routers, firewalls to make sure they aren't outdated, no longer supported by the vendor, end of life, and still meeting performance needs. Applying robust network security controls like firewalls to control traffic, intrusion detection and prevention systems, IDPS, to spot malicious activity, and enforcing strict access and authorization logical controls things like strong passwords, multi-factor authentication, and the principle of least privilege, ensuring only authorized personnel can access critical systems and data and only the parts they need to do their jobs.
Layer upon layer of digital defense.
Precisely. Another crucial control, especially for short-term power issues, is an uninterrupted power supply, UPS. A UPS is essentially a large battery backup device. It sits between the wall power outlet and your critical equipment, like servers or network gear. Its immediate purpose is to maintain a continuous, clean electrical supply to that connected equipment during power fluctuations, like sags or surges,
Yeah.
or complete outages. This prevents improper shutdowns, which can corrupt data, damage sensitive hardware, and disrupt ongoing operations or backups.
So it smooths out the power and buys you time.
Exactly. When a power failure occurs, the UPS switches to its own internal battery power instantaneously, ensuring absolutely no interruption to the connected systems. It's vital to remember, though, that a UPS is not a generator. Its battery capacity is limited maybe minutes, maybe an hour or two, depending on the size and load. It's primarily designed to provide enough time for systems to shut down gracefully and safely, or perhaps for longer-term standby generators to kick in if the outage persists.
Okay, a short-term bridge.
Correct. And finally, a cornerstone concept for availability built right into system design is redundancy. Organizations proactively build in redundant hardware components, sometimes even redundant software instances or storage components, as a normal part of their operational setup, rather than just a reactive measure after something fails. This allows them to easily, often automatically, switch from a failed unit like a malfunctioning server in a cluster, or a dead router, or a faulty network switch to another identical unit that's already in operation and ready to take over the load, often without any noticeable service interruption to the end users.
Having spares ready to go instantly.
Exactly. And this concept of redundancy also applies profoundly to data storage and backup, which is critical for recovery. A very common example you hear about is RAID. RAID stands for Redundant Arrays of Independent Drives, or sometimes inexpensive disks. It's basically a data storage virtualization technology. RAID allows organizations to combine multiple physical disk drives into one or more logical units. And depending on the RAID level chosen, it records data across these multiple drives simultaneously, often distributing or duplicating the data across them specifically for data redundancy and sometimes performance improvement. So if one physical drive in the array fails, the data is still safe and accessible from the other drives in the array, preventing data loss and allowing the system to continue running while the failed drive is replaced.
So RAID protects against single disk failures. That's clever. Okay, speaking of data safety, backups are absolutely foundational, aren't they, for recovering lost data? They're often what people think of first as the ultimate safety net. When organizations are planning their business resiliency program and their backup strategy, what types of backups do they typically choose from? And what are the crucial trade-offs involved? You mentioned creation time versus recovery time.
That's an excellent question, and it's a really critical decision. It directly impacts an organization's recovery time objectives, RTOs, and recovery point objectives, RPOs. Get the backup strategy wrong, and your recovery might be much slower or lose more data than you can afford. There are three primary types of backups commonly used, each with a distinct trade-off profile between how long it takes to create the backup file and how long it takes to restore your systems from that backup after an incident.
Okay, what are the three?
The first is a full backup. Just like the name implies, this is an exact, complete copy of the entire database, all files, all system configurations at a specific point in time. Think of it like making a complete photocopy of an entire sprawling library, every single book, every shelf exactly as it is right now.
Everything.
Everything. Now, full backups are usually very time-consuming to create. They require significant storage space, often a lot of network bandwidth, and processing power on the systems being backed up. Because of this, most organizations only do them periodically, maybe once a week, maybe bi-weekly, often supplementing them with daily partial backups in between.
Okay, takes a long time to make. What about restoring?
That's the immense benefit. Recovering from an incident using a full backup is generally the least time-consuming and simplest way to restore. Because you have one single, complete, self-contained copy of all your systems and data from that point in time, you don't have to piece things together from multiple backup files or sources. You just restore that one big file. It's usually the simplest and fastest path to get everything back.
Got it. Simple restore, slow creation. What's next?
Then we have an incremental backup. This type copies only the data items that have changed since the last backup was performed, regardless of whether that last backup was a full or another incremental. Using our library analogy again, if you did a backup yesterday, today's incremental backup only copies the new books added or pages changed since yesterday.
Just the changes from the previous day.
Exactly. These are usually very fast to create daily or even more frequently because they're only copying a relatively small, manageable amount of new or modified data each time. Takes less time, less storage, less network bandwidth.
Okay, fast to create. What's the catch for restoration?
The catch is that incremental backups are generally the slowest and most complex to restore. Here's why. To get back to a specific point in time, you first have to load the last full backup, and then you have to load each subsequent incremental backup one by one in the correct sequence up to the point you want to restore to. So if you do a full backup on Sunday and daily incrementals Monday through Friday, and you need to restore Friday's state, you have to restore Sunday's full backup, then Monday's incremental changes, then Tuesdays, then Wednesdays, then Thursdays, then finally Fridays.
Wow, okay. That sounds like a lot of steps and potential for error.
It can be lengthy, and it is prone to errors if any one of those incremental files is missing or corrupted, or if you restore them out of sequence, it breaks the chain.
Okay, fast creation, slow and complex restore. What's the third type?
The third type is a differential backup. This one is slightly different. A differential backup copies all the changes that have been made since the last full backup. Let's go back to the library. Full backup on Sunday. On Monday, the differential backup copies all changes made since Sunday. On Tuesday, the differential backup copies all changes made since Sunday, again, including Monday's changes plus Tuesday's changes. On Wednesday, it copies everything changed since Sunday yet again.
So each differential gets bigger and bigger through the week.
Exactly. Each new differential contains the cumulative effects of all activity since that last full backup. Consequently, except for the very first day after a full backup, Daily differential backups usually take longer to create than daily incremental backups because they're copying more data each time as the week progresses.
Okay, slower creation than incremental as the week goes on. How about restoration?
Restoration is the advantage here. Differentials are simpler and faster to restore than incrementals. To restore to any point in time, you only need two backup files, the last full backup and the most recent differential backup from the day you want to restore to. You don't have to sequence multiple intermediate files like you do with incrementals, just the full, then the latest differential. So restoration is typically slower than restoring from just a single full backup, but it's significantly faster and simpler than restoring a long chain of incrementals.
Okay, so differential is kind of a balance. Creation time grows, but restore is simpler than incremental.
That's a great way to put it. It balances creation time storage against restoration time complexity.
So it really boils down to a strategic choice then, doesn't it? Balancing how fast you need to create backups versus how fast you absolutely need to recover, depending on the company's specific operational needs, those RTOs we talked about, and their tolerance for downtime and data loss.
Exactly right. There's no single best backup type. It depends entirely on the business context and requirements. Our sources actually provide a neat, practical example of how this strategic choice plays out. They mention the IT director at a large university. They're managing backups for a truly significant amount of sensitive student and research data. With management approval, they decided on a blended strategy. They implement full backups twice a month. These take several hours to complete because of the sheer volume of data, but they provide that solid, complete baseline recovery point periodically.
Okay, fulls twice a month. What about daily?
On a daily basis, the IT department performs incremental backups between those fulls. This is quick and efficient day to day. So, in the event of a system failure, this blended strategy provides them with access to restore all data. They'd use their most recent full backup file, and then apply the subsequent daily incremental files needed to get up to the desired recovery point. It showcases a really practical and often effective application of mixing these backup types, balancing the need for quick daily backups with the ability to recover all data reasonably efficiently in a catastrophic event. Now, beyond just implementing all these controls and plans and backup strategies, it's absolutely crucial to verify that they're actually effective. You need independent verification. One of the key frameworks used for this, especially for service organizations, is the SOC2 Plus Services criteria developed by the AICPA. One of those criteria is specifically focused on availability. This availability criterion specifically covers the controls an organization has in place regarding its system operation, monitoring, and performance, as well as its backup and recovery procedures. If an organization makes commitments about system availability to its customers, or if availability is a critical business objective for them, then this availability criterion will almost certainly be a mandatory component included in their SOC2 and audit report.
Okay, so SOC2 audits specifically look at availability if it's important to the business. When a SOC2 auditor comes in to assess availability, what exactly are they looking for? How do they detect deficiencies in these controls? What kind of evidence do they ask for? And what are the red flags that might indicate a problem?
That's a great question. They focus on several specific, verifiable areas to ensure the controls aren't just designed well, but are actually operating effectively over time. First, they look very closely at infrastructure capacity and monitoring. Auditors will request access to or demonstrations of the organization's performance and capacity monitoring tools. They'll scrutinize key capacity metrics, things like CPU utilization trends, memory usage, disk I/O rates, network bandwidth consumption. They want to see if the organization is actively monitoring these things.
Not just hoping for the best.
Definitely not. And crucially, they want to see evidence of proactive alerting mechanisms. Are their alerts configured to notify administrators when capacity starts approaching critical thresholds before things actually break? The risk here is significant, right? If proper monitoring and alerting aren't in place, an organization risks unknowingly maxing out its infrastructure capacity. That can lead to major unexpected downtime, poor performance, even data loss, especially if their recovery infrastructure hasn't also been scaled appropriately or tested under load. Auditors want to see proof of proactive capacity management.
Okay, so monitoring capacity is key evidence. What else?
Second, and this is critically important for resilience, they examine the recovery plans themselves. Auditors will request copies of the organization's documented disaster recovery plan and business continuity plan. They'll review the content, scrutinizing it for completeness, for feasibility, for clarity on roles and responsibilities. Does the plan actually make sense? Does it cover the critical systems identified in the BIA?
Checking the plan itself.
Yes, but they go much further than just reading the document. Perhaps most importantly, they will request tangible evidence showing when those plans were last tested, how they were tested, and what the results of those tests were. This isn't just about seeing a plan exists, it's about seeing proof that the plan has been put into action, even in a simulated way.
Proof of test.
Exactly. They'll look for things like test scripts, documentation of the test scenarios used, attendee lists showing who participated in the drill, detailed test reports outlining what worked and what didn't, any deficiencies or problems identified during the test, and critically, evidence that those identified deficiencies were actually remediated or addressed afterward. Did they learn from the test and fix the problems? The risk auditors are assessing here is clear and profound. If recovery plans are not in place, or if they exist on paper but haven't been properly tested against realistic scenarios, then if a real disaster does occur, the organization would lack a clear, proven practice procedure to recover efficiently and effectively. Without testing, the plan is merely a theory, and its effectiveness remains completely unvalidated until it's too late.
That truly reinforces the critical importance of testing these plans, doesn't it? A plan sitting on a shelf is not enough, and auditors know that. It needs to be proven effective through regular drills, just like a fire drill or an earthquake drill in a building. It identifies the weaknesses, ensures everyone knows their role when the pressure is really on. It's all about preparedness in practice, not just in theory. Makes perfect sense. Hashtag tan tag tag outro. Wow. Okay, what an incredible journey we've taken today. Through the complex, sometimes dense, but utterly vital world of availability, resiliency, and disaster recovery. We've gone from defining the core concepts to understanding the myriad risks that businesses face, the proactive preventative controls they put in place, the different recovery strategies, and even how independent audits help ensure these vital systems are truly functioning behind the scenes. It's definitely a lot to take in, but it feels incredibly foundational to how everything works today.
It really is. And if we try to connect all these dots back to the bigger picture, it becomes abundantly clear that this isn't just about IT departments tinkering with servers or some arcane technical jargon. This entire discussion, everything we've covered, is fundamentally about the survival and the long-term reputation of pretty much every modern business. It's about intentionally building in the inherent capacity to withstand and, critically, to quickly recover from the inevitable bumps, the unexpected disruptions, and even the major challenges that life and circumstance throw at us. It's about ensuring continuity in a world that relies so heavily on constant access and operation. It really reveals that hidden layer of protection that often goes completely unnoticed, until, of course, it's sorely missed.
So, what does this all mean for you listening right now? Even if you're not managing a data center or crafting a complex disaster recovery plan for a Fortune 500 company, just understanding these concepts, I think, helps you appreciate the vast, often invisible infrastructure that supports so much of your daily digital life. From your banking apps and streaming services to your online shopping and work tools, it also empowers you, maybe, to think more critically about the reliability of the services you depend on. And perhaps even understand why certain features or services might occasionally have those brief interruptions or maintenance windows. There's a lot going on underneath. And, this raises an important question, maybe a final thought for you to ponder. In a world where unexpected disruptions seem increasingly inevitable, and our digital lives are so deeply intertwined with our professional and personal ones, how much thought do you put into the resilience of your own digital life, or the digital aspects of your work if you're not directly in IT? And maybe, what small steps could you take, even just personally, to build your own sort of mini resiliency plan for your important data or your critical digital routines?
Yeah, that's a great point.
Perhaps it's just making absolutely sure your precious photos are automatically backed up to the cloud, not just sitting on your phone. Or maybe it's having a simple secondary internet option ready for your home office for when your main connection inevitably flakes out. Little things can make a big difference.
They really can.
We certainly hope this deep dive has given you plenty to think about, and maybe a new appreciation for the silent guardians of our digital world. The people and processes focus on availability and resilience. Until next time, keep digging into the knowledge that matters.